One of the most difficult types of shifts on the violin or viola, or probably any stringed instruments, is the type where we have to play an open string in between two notes that are in different positions. The reason it's so difficult to play this type of shift is because for that brief moment you have the open string, we lose the distance, the sense of distance between the two notes, and it might throw us off. In order to be really good at these kind of shifts, it's very important, in addition to doing a lot of repetitions and get really good muscle memory, it's really important to have a good relative pitch and continuous ear training and really hear the upcoming note in your mind beforehand. So let's look at some ways to practice it. Hey, this is Ina Langerman from Violin.live, helping you along your musical journey. In this video, we're going to look at 3 different pieces of repertoire for violin, or in violin part. And they're all going to be very different. They're all going to involve a shift where we have to play an open string in between, and they're all a little different. So for each one, I'll show you how I would approach it, how I would practice it. So the first example is going to be Richard Strauss's Don Juan, the very, very opening of the first violin part, which is asked on numerous auditions. So the part we're going to look at is actually the first 4 notes, because right away in the very beginning, we get G, A, G, C. Now, many people like to do this fingering where you go to the 3rd position, including me, because I find 3rd position not only more comfortable in my hand, but we are going up to that E half note, and I like to vibrate on the 2nd finger. I prefer that as opposed to 4th finger, so that's my preference. Some people do like to play this opening all in 1st position, but if you're like me and you like to shift to the 3rd position, this is a good example of having that open G string in the middle. How do I know I'm going to land on C? How do I know this? So, very, very important, and this applies to anything like this that happens in the first 4 positions on the violin or viola, in which case the hand makes contact with the neck over here on this side of the hand. So this is actually the key. Here's the thing. We don't get to practice this shift from A to C on the 1st finger here, because we are in reality going to lift it. So the key to hitting the note C in tune has to do with the base of the finger making contact with the neck. The distance that we are practicing through muscle memory happens over here on the side of the fingerboard. It's not between 2 notes. So we are using this contact over here as an alternative to what we would normally have if this was a normal single finger shift, because if we just did, we can easily hear the slide up and know when to stop, but we don't get to do it. We have to lift the 1st finger. So I memorize this, so I know where the 3rd position is. Of course, when you learn how this feels, how to get to 3rd position, it's very important always to pre-hear that C in your mind. And another approach to this you can take is, before you start the excerpt, is to find the C first, get a good feeling for that 3rd position if you're doing this fingering. Okay, here we are, and then you briefly go back to 1st position to play the very beginning. And you're back. And it's very important that this always makes contact during the shift. If I do not have this contact here, if the base of the 1st finger is off, I will have a high chance of missing it, because then I don't have any guidance where I'm going. It feels too much of a blind shift, so it becomes more of a gamble than a strategy. Now for the next example, we're going to leave the lower positions and see what happens up in the higher positions, and this is going to be a different type of shift. We're going to look at a section from Prokofiev's 2nd violin concerto. There is a section right before the octaves in the very beginning. There's a section where you have to play an open A string. So let's see what happens right before the octave A's. We have this arpeggio. And then we have to have this octave A, and we have to do it right after playing an open A, which makes it a little tricky. Now, there is a little trick for something like this. Notice that the notes before the open A, they were all on the E string. And the E string is our secret weapon here to know how to get to the octave A's. Of course, another one is you can use the A harmonic, but I find this following way a little more reliable. So right before, so I have this note D on the second finger before the open A, right? So a good way to practice this is create a shift that would normally be a single finger shift. Normally you wouldn't think to do in such a place. So before I play the open A, I'm going to do this shift. I'm going to do it in silence. This does require a lot of practice and a certain level of trust here. But I would add this shift because, going up to the F, because the F natural is a minor sixth away from the A on the bottom, on the first finger A. And I know that minor sixth, that means the fingers are touching. So if this is F, then I know the A is right next to it. That's how I know I'm gonna always hit that low A. So, putting it together, the way I would practice this, that's how I know that low A is always going to be there. Now, of course, that only leaves me to practice putting down the pinky. Of course, later I'm going to have to practice that shift that I invented there without hearing it. So of course that takes a lot of repetition and also knowing my intervals. So the interval from D to F, minor third, right? I need to know that interval in order to do it correctly. So the next step, now that I know this interval of the shift, the minor third, is to practice it in a certain rhythm. So the rhythm of the music, dum bum ba 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 bum. So during that little eighth note rest, I can do the shift. Now I'm going to do it audibly. Of course, eventually, I'm going to have to remove the bow from the string. That takes a certain level of trust and a lot of practice, but if you practice it this way, audibly creating that extra shift, you'll know exactly how to move it and when to move the hand, and you have a really set plan. So you'll have a much higher chance of hitting that octave in tune, even though you have to play an open A string. Now, the third example for playing shifts with an open string in the middle, we're going to look at the very, very end of Mozart's fourth concerto, the end of the third movement. Now, in this one, because again, this is within the first four positions, we're shifting again from first to third. If you're doing this fingering, there are many options. Some people like to stay in third position for this whole thing. I like to change positions and do as many notes on the E string as possible to keep the bright color at the end. So again, just like in Don Juan, very important is to keep the base of the first finger in contact with the neck. But here, in this one, because unlike Don Juan you had no choice, you had to lift the finger and replace it. In this one you don't have to, because you can practice it without the open A's. Because in this case I'm practicing going from second finger G to the B. So essentially it works like a normal single finger shift here. The only mystery here is really how to time it, when to do it. Just like in the Prokofiev example, if you figure out rhythmically when to do it, that's going to really solve a lot of the mystery in it and help you land correctly. Of course, just like every shift you ever do, you have to have a trained ear. Know what the next note sounds like. Know the intervals. Very important. If you are not familiar with single finger shifts, check out this video right up here and in the description below. Do that first before playing this kind of stuff. It's very important. So let's time this one. So I found for myself in this example, I do tend to time the shift with the final open A before I play the B. might find something a little bit different is more comfortable for you, but the most important thing is to get into a certain rhythm. Don't shift at a random time, because there are several open A's and you have to know exactly when you're gonna do it and how your hand's gonna feel and how you're gonna pre-hear the note B. That's something that's important pretty much with any shift that's similar. All right, so it was hard for me to pick just 3 examples for this video, so if you have some really good ones that I did not mention, of course there's a ton of music out there, give me some examples down in the description below. In the next video, we're going to look at shifts that happen during rests, or while the bow is off the string, or before we even start playing. Those are also very, very challenging shifts, and we're going to look at some examples for that in the next installment. That's a lot of the concepts in that is also very much related, so don't miss it. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell. I would like to hear from you. What are you working on? Let me know. And by the way, I also have a bi-monthly newsletter that goes out twice a month on the 1st and 15th of each month. Links down in the description below. Happy practicing, and I will see you next time.